I've burned 15 years of savings. I've been working for the past almost 4 years now, 7 days a week, and I haven't cut a single paycheck yet. I haven't made 1 Swiss franc of this company. Zero. You better be wake up, otherwise it's gonna burn you very quickly.
So it's very rare that somebody in the watch industry branches out and launches their own watch, their own brand, and within the first year they are completely sold out for a long time, and they win a GPHG award. But the man that's sitting in front of me today has done just that, and I'm absolutely honoured not only to be talking to him today, but also to count him as a good friend, and that's Sylvain Berneron. Welcome, Sylvain.
Hi, Simon. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking the time. I'm blushing because of the introduction, but I'm happy to share the journey and the project so far.
No, thank you for taking the time out to talk with us today, because you're obviously a very, very busy man. You've got a lot of watches to make, a lot of orders to fulfill. That certainly sounds like it. But listen, I wanted to just really, for the viewers' benefit, I mean, we've known each other for a while. I know a lot about your background, but many people who are watching this may not know, obviously a designer, but you started in the automotive sector, right?
Yes. So I'm as a child, I was a blend of art and technique already, because my mother was quite a productive painter as a hobby. So she taught me the fine arts, and my dad was an engineer. We used to ride motorcycles as a hobby as well. So I grew up being a blend of the two, which led me into industrial design in university. And I started my career working for BMW in Munich, in Germany, drawing cars and motorcycles. But after, 7-8 years, transferred into the watchmaking industry through a few freelance projects for IWC, where I had the chance to then work full-time in Geneva for the watch industry, for the Richemont Group. So I worked for Baume & Mercier, for IWC, a few brands. And then I joined Breitling for 5 years, where I had the pleasure to basically build an internal product department almost from scratch. We were 3 people when I started, and we were a unified department up to almost 60 people when I left 6 months ago.
Wow, I mean, that's incredible. So, when you transitioned from the automotive design, motorbikes, cars, etc., into watches, were there a lot of the... look, I know my background is as a graphic designer, so I understand there are principles that will translate. But did you have a passion for watches at that time? Were you a watch collector, or was it just that the opportunity came up and it really fitted your skills?
So it was a combination of 2 factors. I grew up surrounded by watches because my dad and his brothers are watch guys, but the normal watch guys. Like, I've been surrounded by Speedies and Rolex pre-ceramics, Hamiltons, the decent watches, let's say. I had the pleasure to play with them. So I had this, how can I say, this preconception feeling, the use of seeing men wearing watches and etc. So it was ingrained in me. I didn't know that there was such a prolific industry and such a playground for designers to make these things. And also at the time in university, I was riding a lot of motorcycles, which is why I've been attracted by the thrill and the speed of the petrol head industry. I've been having worked in this industry. I've felt quickly very restricted because you have safety regulations, budget regulations, environmental regulations, aerodynamics. You have a lot of things to consider when you build a car or a motorcycle, which you do not have to take in consideration when you build either jewelry or watches. So as a designer, selfishly, it is a lot more fun to go in an industry or tackle a topic where you can go full bang and do not have to compromise on so many other aspects of the object itself. And on a watch, the worst thing that can happen is that it stops and you don't have the time, which nowadays is not big of a deal because we all have a smartphone or screens around us to have the time. So the worst thing, as I said, is a movement failure. When on a car or a motorcycle, the consequences can be this sort of, which is why you don't let the designer have as much fun as you would like to.
Yeah, but look, I mean, I have had a few watches where the crown has dug into the back of my hand. It can be
Yes.
pretty painful sometimes.
Ergonomics, yes, another
Yeah.
another big topic. But yes, so that's pretty much what led me into the watchmaking industry. I think the biggest difference and the thing I had to learn was the scale. When you draw a car or a motorcycle, the minimum is 1 millimeter. When on a watch, 1 millimeter is a football field. You can do so much things within 1 millimeter, especially now that you consider that 1 mil is 50% of the thickness of my caliber in my watch. So I can get half of the gears I need to give you the time in 1 mil thick. So that shows basically the tremendous difference, the gap you have in terms of scales between the two.
What I find really fascinating about your Berneron Mirage, your first release, is that it couldn't be more different to the Breitlings that we see today.
Mhm.
And it just, I'd love to know a little bit about, what your vision was for this piece and for your first release. And also, I guess two questions in one here. What came first? Was it the concept and the vision for this particular design that made you think, I really want to bring this to reality, and that means I've got to venture out and create a brand? Or was it that you had the ambition to create a brand first and then the design came later?
Okay, so yeah, many things to unpack. First, why the work is so different under my name than Berneron. I think it's something I've been explaining to the design team I used to manage before. A good professional designer, when he's hired by a company, should, in my opinion, uh, understand the brand he or she works for in order to basically play the same music. You're like a musician in an orchestra. If you decide to go in this route and join an orchestra, it's to play the same music. It's not to play your music in a corner just to please yourself. So I do see a massive difference between putting your name on the product and having to express yourself, who you are and what you like, and joining a brand and joining a team effort in order to produce um, um, a design, or in this case, a watch that is coherent and with the heritage of the brand so far. So my goal at Breitling was to make the best Breitlings I could, which I tried. So I learned the history of the brand, surrounded myself by historians and collectors to make sure that when we make a new Breitling, it's sharp enough to be at the avant-garde of what modern watches can be, and yet still be connected with the heritage of Breitling, because I didn't want to break the rope and I wanted to perpetuate that legacy. That was the first point. The second point was I never dreamed to make my brand. Um, I think one reason is the comfort that as a designer, it is so much more comfortable to hide yourself behind a fancy name. You work for Rolex or for Cartier, and you don't need to place your name out there. When in my case now, having watches where it has my family name on the dial is sometimes very scary, because it's out there and it's out there forever, and you I can't hide the fact that it is directly linked to me for now and forever. So it was never an ambition. If I could find a way to diminish this link in the future, I would actually do so, for a matter of work-life balance. It is sometimes very demanding physically and mentally to have such a strong link between the two. And finally, for the Mirage, this project started years ago. So I effectively spent 3 years to how can I say, construct it and make it come into a reality. But the idea was in the back of my head for at least 5 or 6 years, and it slowly grew into what it became now. simply because even in the watches, so you will tell me that I'm never happy, but so I left the car industry because it was too many creative restrictions. The truth is, in every industry you find restrictions. So in the watch industry, you also find restrictions. And one very, I don't want to go too geeky into movement development, for example, but a very simple thing maybe for the audience to understand is either you want a movement that performs very well, who gives you good chronometry, many different complications, and you will have a sick movement because you need the real estate to pack that performance. Or you want a watch that has a very delicate proportion on the wrist, and you need to have a scene movement, and that more compact package means usually you have to sacrifice the performance of the movement. And you always have this
So there are always
trade-off.
compromises, trade-offs and
Yes,
compromises to be made.
yes. So there are not restrictions, legal restrictions, but you come to the physical restrictions at some point. Uh, and for some reason, I seem to be always attracted in these corners where it becomes unmakeable. This is where all of a sudden my attention gets attracted to. And I was simply fantasizing about making a movement that could both be very thin and yet offer a decent performance. So I started to draw a train of gears with a large barrel, a large balance wheel, all the attributes you need to have a good chronometry, uh, and quickly came to the realization that either it would be a round movement very large, it would have been like a pocket watch, 45, almost 50 mil wide, or I also had the very weird option to just go around the gears to make a more compact movement, not circular. And this is how the idea came out. So I had the only way I could make it work in a wristwatch was to make it not round. This is the entire. And then being a designer, I thought it was funny to just draw this weird band watch to start with, and this is how the whole project started, frankly. So it is really form following function, which is also, and it's a full circle now, the story, because this is also what I've been taught at university. I'm sure you know this as well, being a graphic designer. We often, as students, get taught that good design is form following function. And in this case, the entire watch, the shape of the case, follows the shape of the wheels inside. So it could not be closer to that ethos.
The K-shape designed itself in some ways, I guess, by
Mm-hmm.
fitting around the movement. So you talk about how thin the movement is and the challenges that maybe you've gone to in terms of making such a thin movement. But also you've really there've been no compromises in terms of the choice of materials. And these are materials not only for the case, as we would expect, but also for the movement parts, right?
Yes, indeed. So the movement is entirely made of 18 karat gold, or I should mention all the components that can structurally be in gold are in gold. So, for example, the ratchet wheel, the crown wheel are in steel because I need the torque to go through the gears, and you would simply bend the teeth if they were in gold. But otherwise, the main plate, the bridges, are entirely made of 18 karat gold, which is in itself an additional difficulty. And the entire Mirage is also made of 18 karat gold. It's a full gold construction like we used to do in the 70s and 80s, which means it's the dial, the hands, the case, the crown, the movement, and even the spring bars are made in 18 karat gold. So I even went in the far end of the Jura in Switzerland to order some special yellow gold and white gold 18 karat spring bars, depending on the case, because we have these two variants. So I also align the gold tint to the tint of the case when it comes to spring bars. And therefore, you have this full gold construction, which I find very interesting in terms of product design, because you have this watch that is very thin and yet quite has a substantial weight to it due to the density of gold within the movement as well as in the case. And therefore, you have this almost mythical feel to it because it is way heavier than what it looks like, which I find interesting.
to produce a watch in gold like this? I can't imagine the kind of investment that must have taken.
So indeed, as we've discussed, you and I, multiple times, making watches is extremely cash intensive, especially because you need to free the tooling and you need to pay for the production up front. These components take a lot of time to be made. One example was, for example, the gold spring bars. I had to wait 11 months to get them, and I had to pay 100% upfront because the supplier, rightfully so, uh, was not trusting the idea, let's say, to put it nicely. He was like, look, you're just wasting your money. Nobody will see them. Why why do you need this? And I could not convince him. And at the end, I remember I told him, look, Christian, you have to see this as an offering to God. Uh, I'm just trying to do my best here. And it's not about the budget. It's just about me doing an act of love and devotion, trying to do my best. And the best would clearly be to have a watch entirely made of gold, including the spring bars. So that's why I'm doing it. There is no more rational than this. And I know it's not a rational argument, especially for an industrial person, because he was really like troubled by this. He was really trying to find the rational behind, and there is none, to be honest. And sometimes we could even question: does it need to be rational all the time? Like, if you buy an expensive watch, let's face it, if you spend more than $10, everything after $10 in a watch is extra by definition, because you can have a precise watch for $10 on eBay or on Alibaba. So everything you spend after $10 is to please yourself. Now, whether you look for technical superlatives or preciousness or style or whatever it can be, or status symbol it can be, we all have different reasons to collect watches. It can be the historical value as well, or design, or anything, but anything above $10 is extra, in my opinion.
But I love that because that just typifies what someone would see as a commercial decision, and yet you would see as a creative decision. And I guess that far too often creative people are kind of constrained by commercial factors, aren't they? And you've just given such a great example of, this is no compromise. This is the creative idea. This is the concept. This is what I want to do. I don't care what it costs. I don't care the problems that we're going to have trying to do it. We're going to try and do it.
I learned a great deal doing this project, because until I did this project, I used to be a bit of a creative diva, which I believe when you're a creative director is part of your job. You're here to give a hard time to people, to make sure you can push the ethics of the company and the standard as hard as you can. And if somebody doesn't do it, then nobody does. So you're here as a icebreaker, sort of, to and it's not to give a hard time to people just for the sake of it. It's really to try to elevate the standards of the company and the boundaries we want to push. So being a creative diva when you are in a $1 billion turnover company with hundreds of people to split the consequences over, it's not easy, but you can manage. You do it, and then this is where it became very funny, because I became the creative diva unto myself, because I'm the one paying. Yeah, so not only the part of my brain, the creative part, goes like, yeah, we need the creatives, we need the 18 karat gold spring bars. And then you have the rational part of my brain who goes like, well, but we have to pay for them and we have to wait. Do you really need this? So I had this really internal fight in my brain. At
It's
the
a bit
end,
like when you see those cartoons and you have, kind of a devil on one shoulder and an angel on
yes,
the other shoulder.
yes, exactly. At the end, I went full in. So I did everything in gold. For the record, at every step when I had the choice to cut corners, I even took the screws in gold. I took the best shades of gold that I could find as well. So really left no stone unturned, simply because I wanted, in case of failure, to have no regrets. This is really,
Right.
that was a very important part for me. That if I burn 15 years of saving into this and it doesn't work, I do not want to have the feeling, or at night to be thinking, what if I had done this or that, or if I had worked maybe slightly harder, maybe the outcome would have been different. In this case, I knew I spent all the money I had, I used all the time at my disposal, and I gave my absolute hardest. So if this doesn't work, there is no regrets to have. Uh, so that was the mindset, frankly.
I'd love to know what the conversation was like on the day when you said to your wife, and look, I mean, I know she's involved in the business and hugely supportive, but I'd love to know what the conversation was like on the day you said to her, okay, so I'm thinking of resigning from my very highly paid job at Breitling and using 15 years of our savings to launch my own watch that's going to have gold spring bars. How did that conversation go?
So, thankfully for me, she's an architect, so she understands the 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 need of having creative projects in our lives, and this is something that you're a creative as well. I'm sure you understand what I mean, but an artistic endeavor is not something that you can control. Sometimes it's a curse more than a blessing, and it's like very often refer. I've seen these videos recently. Uh, some people, when they are stressed, they start dancing because they are dancers, and dancing is a way for them to release stress. Uh, yes, it's the same for singing. It's the same in my case, and you have the same curse. I'm sorry, but uh, well, we through drawing can express who we are, get a deep feeling of fulfillment, and this is something we need in our lives. And I frankly try to refrain it as much as I can, but it circled back in my head for years and years and years until I simply had to do it. So. For the record, I burned only my money, so these are my 15 years of savings because I didn't want to have to face the consequences of burning her money or someone else's money, because I could have found friends or investors that would be silly enough to risk into this. But I was not comfortable taking so much risk. So it was like, okay, worst case scenario. The worst case scenario would have been that I worked 15 years for nothing. And God knows I worked hard for 15 years, so it would have been hard
I
enough to
bet.
swallow, but that would have been the worst outcome. Uh, and of course, then the question is, in a couple, she has a stable job. I decided to quit mine, and then where it gets scary is that when you know there is nothing to fall back on, frankly. And if this project fails, uh, you will have consequences in the daily life we have, which is even why I decided to go full on and as I told you before, try to leave no stone unturned to make sure that if it fails, I have no regrets. Um, but she basically agreed. We've been married for 5 years, and she knows that I would be happier with a failing watch brand rather than a house or something. So she gave me full trust, and we started.
Yeah, so when you actually launched the Mirage, did you have samples and prototypes that you were able to show people, or because you sold out incredibly quickly, didn't you? But was there physical product that you could show people, or how did you launch the product?
In the beginning, we launched the product with 3D renderings in October 2023. So it's a little bit more than a year ago. And the reason was that I've announced that I would launch at that point, and that the delivery of some components have been delayed. This is also in the industrial realities that when you're a small young brand, you're not the priority at every suppliers, and when they
Of
have the
course.
bigger client calling, your requests get delayed. Um, so as a result, I didn't have the prototype in time, but I still committed to press, to collectors, to reveal the work, and I didn't want to break the narrative, because this is also something that when you make a new brand, you try to gather an audience together and you try to embark a group of people on a story. And I believe the worst thing you can do is to put a huge stop of 6 months or a year into that narrative just because you can't fulfill these industrial obligations. Which is why I decided, and it broke my heart because I wanted to show the real watch. So it was an incredibly hard pill to swallow for me to go like, I can't believe that I spent so much fucking money to launch a rendering. I was like, it was a nightmare, Simon. I swear to you, I was like, I could not. It took me a good 2 weeks. I was like, I can't believe I burned so much money, and all I will have to present are renderings. For God's sake, renderings is like 5Gs, and I burned 100 times that money. Where is the rest? So I was calling suppliers. I was like, guys, you have the money. Turn it into something, please.
Please deliver those bloody spring bars.
Yes, yes, exactly. And so for the sake of the story, uh, I am very lucky to work with suppliers all in Switzerland around my house. They are small family-owned businesses. Sometimes they also encounter problems like machine failures, so their machines are broken, or it could be sometimes that some treatments go wrong and you have to restart and reorder the material. So you can quickly lose 4 to 5 months easily, which is something I had to learn, despite being in the industry for a long time. When you work for Breitling and you have thousands of components in stock, you don't even feel this. Yes, it's not even a discussion. But when you order 50 parts and they don't arrive, all of a sudden your entire production line is stopped, which is so I'm basically falling off my chair every day, climbing back up, and every day it's a new problem. So I'm building this small business, uh, and yes, yeah, I call this project Mirage because I thought it was too hard to make, and it turns out every day it reminds me why it's called Mirage. Like. Even the price of gold is becoming very problematic. The price of gold
Yeah,
has
right.
risen by 50% because of the geopolitical issues in the world, wars. Uh, and that is an issue on my project, which is made 90% of gold, we find solutions. I delay purchases, and I buy more when it's slightly lower. So I try to compensate all these things.
I mean,
Um,
it's like investing in the stock market. I mean, literally, isn't it?
yes, yes, except in our case, the goal is not to make a benefit. The goal is to keep making the manufacturing line not working to lose money, uh, which is yeah, it can be quite worrying sometimes. But thank God, which is why, for example, I had to increase my price in increments of 5Gs for the next 2 years. So it went from 55 to 61, and if the price keeps going back up, we'll jump to 65. And I explained to the clientele that I have to offset the price of gold into the margin. I do not apply any coefficient of profitability on it. I just, it's a direct repercussion on the price of gold that I pay into the end price. Simply because I could not make turn a profit making these watches if I had to swallow the increase of the price of gold, which is massive these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have the renders done. You're ready to launch this product, albeit with renders. So you've put this out to the press. I guess you've got journalists engaged with it. They're writing about it. When did the orders start coming in? And was that done through direct inquiries to yourself, or how did that work? I mean, how did you take this to market?
So I'm a watch collector myself. I had up to 25 watches before I started this project. I had to liquidate 21 pieces to this date because I wanted to turn these watches into cash for the project. So I'm lucky enough that I knew a few collectors in the market. Before I launched the project online with the renderings, I had around 30 orders. So that's a year and a half of production of collectors that I knew that basically spread the word and committed to acquire a watch. These are the collectors like the Auro Montanaris, the Laurent Picciottos, the Ronnie Madvanis, Bader Belsala, the monster collectors that we can see on Instagram that have an eye for these things, and they pull the trigger very early. And I'm often very impressed to see how these educated collectors are quick at making important decisions. Uh, like Auro decided to take a watch. All I had was a PDF and a dummy where even the dial was in paper, and it was very impressive for me even to see how quickly they make the decision. So when I launched, I had a year and a half of orders. When I launched the renderings, it bumped to 4 years of orders, three and a half roughly. And 6 months later, when the prototype, the metal prototype, finally arrived, I was able to attend to Watches and Wonders, which is the big fair in Geneva we have every year, to present the first prototype. And then it bumped from 4 years to 6 years of orders, up to the point where I decided to close the order book for two reasons. First, collectors were like, I'm not happy to pay 50% deposit to get my watch in 7 years, which I fully understand. And second, I was not confident to take orders 7 years down the line, because when you take the order, it means I have to commit to make them at the price I agreed on. And I would hate to have the bad blood of the discussion going like, oh, I sold it to you at 55, now it's 65 because the gold blew up in between. So we closed the order book at 6 years. That was, uh, when was it? That was almost a year ago now. No, so less 9 months ago at the time of this recording. And it's the same watch that has been registered to the GPHG and won an award 2 weeks ago now. To add trouble to an already troubled situation. Now I've received in the past 2 weeks more than 1,000 emails
Wow.
to inquire about this watch. So I've been spending days on the computer trying to reply to emails. As we are talking, I still have over 1,000 emails unread in the mailbox, and I'm trying to sponge it as good as I can. But it is very, very demanding, um, and every young watchmaker who experience it's like if the market was one big entity, and when it looks at you, it's like in the Lord of Rings. You have this lightning light on you, and you better be wake up, otherwise it's gonna burn you very quickly. It is very
Yeah.
crazy. Like even Raphael reported over to. So Raphael is our head of brand communication, so he's in charge of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We received thousands of DMs just for the GPHG. Congratulations.
That's just amazing, isn't it? Well, he's obviously doing a very good job, because he replied to my congratulations within about 30 seconds. So he's obviously
Yeah,
very efficient.
we try. We try to, and this is also something we would like to build. Uh, I'd like to spend all the resources in making a good product and yet sell it in a very regular way. For example, this is my take on this. You see the way I dress. I don't show up in a $10,000 suit. God knows that I spend the money on the watches and on what I will give to my clients. But in terms of experience, I don't burn the money into fancy cars, fancy suits, fancy shop windows, and whatever, because I'd rather build a very human relationship with your clients while transacting the highest product that I can possibly make. This is the personality as a brand that I'd like to build. Um, some people sometimes are not happy because they expect me to deliver the watch in an helicopter to them. and I basically say, look, if you want to pick up your watch from your factory, you will have to drive to Neuchâtel to pick it up. Some collectors are very happy because we just share a meal and deliver the watch like this, which is my some of my favorite moments. But we have also this clash. I try to not just follow the path. I think that the luxury industry has been, um, how can I put it? It became very tedious, and sometimes I felt that the experience was more important than the product itself. That you could lure a client with a manufacturer tour, a private jet flight ticket, the best food, the nicest looking girls and stuff. All of a sudden, to of the middle of all that, put a product that is quite mediocre. So I'd like to reverse that back. We are a young company with limited resources, and I want to give these resources, all of them, into the product that you can take home with you.
You're investing in what really matters. You're investing in the product, and I'm sure you're investing in new products to come as well. So what does the future look like? I mean, clearly you've got this huge demand now in the market for Berneron watches, or for the Mirage, let's say, but this isn't going to be the end of the story by no means. I mean, there's, so what can you tell us about what what the future might hold?
So we have a 10-year product plan. Actually, it was 12 years when I started, 12 years product plan. So far, we've executed year one and year two. So year one was the Mirage 38 millimeter, the original one. Second year was the Mirage 34 millimeter, which is basically the same concept in a smaller size. These are the two references with the stone dials. So we have the Tiger Eye and the Lapis Lazuli, which is basically a different take on the same idea, just with stone dials and a more minimalist and jewelry approach to the same concept. Again, it is a full gold construction, except for the dial, which is a semi-precious stone, so a hard stone. And next year we're gonna launch our second collection with an annual calendar, very demanding. So this is the time where we will get into complications. I've been working on that third caliber for it's almost a year now. And so in September, we're going to launch in Geneva this third caliber. I already know what the third collection would look like, and we are investigating now some elements to for the launch in 2 years. And this is also the part of the challenge, which is that you have to commit onto the next thing before you know if the first one worked. And it's a bet in a bet in a bet in a bet, and this is where really it goes sometimes very scary. Like, um, and if you don't do that, if you don't overextend yourself to the next milestone, you will suffocate of your own work. And sometimes when I sign the hiring contracts, I'm like, my God, I don't have this business need yet. Why am I hiring somebody? And by the time he or she comes, I'm already overloaded with work. So this is where it becomes interesting. So, for example, the second caliber, the small Mirage caliber, was launched and paid for before we had the success that we currently have on the first size Mirage, which
Wow.
is
Yeah. I mean, that is the risk involved in that is just incredible, isn't it? I mean,
it is
you must
massive.
have, yeah, you must have a few sleepless nights of thinking, is this going to work? Is this going to be a success? Or
And at the end of the day, the keep in mind that not only the risk involved is massive, but when you win is to inject the profit into another bet. So I
yeah,
give you another example, and sometimes the bets are not even on the watches. I give you a precise example. The combined profit of the first and the second Mirage has currently been grouped in as a bag as an investment bag for the company, and that investment bag fuels the third caliber, which is the annual calendar caliber, and also fuels the expansion of a workshop. So in 4 months, we're gonna enter a 6,000 square feet workshop, which has to be built in. So we spend almost $500,000 just in construction work to make this workshop. And yet we're going to enter a 6,000 square feet workshop with being a team of 5. And this is where it gets completely silly, but it's a decision that I took. You have two options when you do a startup. Either you take a small workshop and you have to move every 3 years in parallel as your team grows and you have more and more people to hire and to build in. But when you do different movings every 2-3 years, the rent will overlap. You have to pay for the cost of moving. You have to stop the production. You have to pack the stuff, make different contract of insurances and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that energy and that overlap of spending, I judge to be, I make a quick calculation, I judge it would be actually more of a struggle than a benefit. So I decided to build right now the workshop that I need in 10 years. And this is where it gets really scary. So the 6,000 square feet that I have now, that I will have in 4 months, are the ones that I need in 10 years if everything goes well. But I have to swallow it right now. So it's really like... So this shows the level of risk. It's like being a kid and I give you a backpack. You're a 4-year-old and I give you a backpack of a 14-year-old on your back. And if you make
Yeah.
it, then you will have the right to go to middle school in 10 years. This is pretty much what we are doing. And it's the only way to do it without having to have external capital injection. The
Yeah.
only
Right. Of
other
course.
way, yes, if I want to make it easier on myself, I have to bend the knee and to ask somebody to lend me hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and then I can have a smoother growth curve. But I decided to take the hard route. So, and God knows this is what we are going for.
Yeah.
So,
Your story reminds me a lot of. I was talking to Max Buser about when he started MBNF, and there are so many parallels. You were talking about how how the collectors, the early adopters, got on board very quickly, just seeing renderings. And I remember him talking about how, he basically took drawings and renderings to a big retailer in the Middle East, I think it was, and showed them his plans. And they immediately said they'd give him a 30% down payment on a very big order. And he said, had they have not done that, there would have been no business. The watch just never would have existed. And so this seems to be a common story, I think, in entrepreneurs in the watch industry, maybe. But what you've done is you've, what you're saying really is that you've reinvested every single part of profit back into the business. And, I guess people from the outside might look at you and think, wow, this guy's, going to be hugely wealthy, with all the orders he's taken, but you're probably not going to see any of that for a long time.
and I'll give you an anecdote referring to that. Now on Instagram, we have a lot of younger guys. It's mostly men that go, "Oh, it must be an amazing position to be in. Gosh, I wish I would be in your shoes." Like being the young founder of a successful watch brand. And I often ask these people what kind of, so I describe my position and I tell them, look, I've burned 15 years of savings. I've been working for the past almost 4 years now, 7 days a week, and I haven't cut a single paycheck yet. I haven't made 1 Swiss franc of this company. 0. So if that's the
Wow.
position you dream to be in,
Yeah.
feel free to be my guest. I can and so this is very often the sort of fracture that you have between the glamorous brand and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I've made all these choices, and I think this brand sometimes is almost doing its own life on its own. It grows faster than I anticipated, and we get to touch people that I never dreamed that I could touch. We have jewelry designers, singers, dancers, artists, designers from all around the world that resonate with what we did, which is far greater than I could ever imagine, to be honest. So, and this gives me the joy, uh, deep joy, to keep going, and it's worth more than money. I'm happier this way than having a bag of money based on many sales. So I am deeply flattered and happy of the situation we are in. But it is true um, that in terms of numbers, if you look only at the metrics on a piece of paper, it's far from being as glamorous as people think it is.
Yeah, I can imagine, certainly from what you've described. And I'm sure that's the same in a lot of startup businesses. But the way you were talking about the investment and the capital that you've had to put into this project is just on another level, isn't it? But it's interesting what you were saying about that. It must be hugely rewarding and satisfying when you've got really high profile collectors, high net worth people, maybe celebrities, people like that who want your product. So I guess that in some ways brings its own reward, but at some point you also need to put food on the table, right?
Yes, exactly. Which is why, and it is in the business plan. I will start to pay myself as an employee of the company in 2025. So I will, and I created the company from a legal perspective in September 2022. So that's already 2.5 years of absolute zero, because all the cash made goes into the next project. Um, and I try to maximize that bag of cash in order to have the because it's really, you really have a compound effect. If you save 10 and you reinvest and your bet works, then you generate 30. And if you take
Yeah,
that full 30 compounded, then you get 90. But if you would have start with 5, you get 5 to 15 and 15 to 45, and all of a sudden the gap is 45 between 90 and 45.
yeah,
So especially in the first years, you want to maximize the compound effect, but that means you're basically working 7 days a week, starving, literally starving. And you have to keep going, uh, and it is quite brutal. But I've listened to many entrepreneurs' podcasts. Has nothing to do with watchmaking. You hear people in the music industry, in the real estate, whatever, to basically tell you any new business, it's almost 5 years working for free if you want to have something that is stable and built in and has some sort of inertia. So Max Busser, you were referring to, I have the privilege to count him as a friend. So he advised me on many different topics, and he confirmed that you basically have to work 5 years for nothing. Uh, because quick reward is basically what will chop any potential of investment in the future. So it's like growing a tree, right? If when you have the first apple, you cut it and hit it, then the tree is
just
gone.
no more trees.
Yes, you have to take the apple, put it back in the ground, so that you have a second apple tree. This is what you need to do. But it is
Yeah,
it is very hard to achieve. We all know the principles, and in the daily life, it is very hard to achieve. And it requires discipline and delayed gratification. This is also very hard. I had, for example, friends telling me, "Oh, you must be over the moon for the GPHG." I am very happy and very flattered. Don't get me wrong, but by no means I consider this to be a line of arrival or an end line of the race. It's a good indication on the way onto the journeys that we want to build.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about the GPHG. I mean, it's just a huge, fantastic achievement that you got that prize. I mean, it was just. I was so pleased for you on the night when I was watching it on the live stream. It sounds like it's brought its own problems, but how did it feel in that moment when you walked up on stage and collected that?
So the all the build up to the ceremony is already quite nerve wracking, because so we've been invited to participate. Then we had to provide a watch that was concourse ready. Um, so basically, for the better part of almost a year now, I had two prototypes, and one has been gone to the GPHG. So I still have to function without this second prototype that I need to display to my clients. So that's a challenge. Then all the build up to the ceremony, where you have to give all the details and where you sit and etc. You have to dress up, show, queue. You arrive in this huge auditorium where you have 1.5 thousand people. So it's not like an auditorium where you have 50 or 100 guys. It's not a small theater by any means. You have almost 1,500 people. Um, and I had done the math. I could have potentially win three things. So my category, or maybe two jury prizes. It could have been, out of guessing, revelation of the year, the ones that Remy took this year, or Audacity. Of course, these two prizes are the highest because they sit right below the golden hand, the aiguille d'or. So obviously you want one of these two because they are quote unquote higher recognition from the jury.
Right.
Because basically what happens in the way they vote, the aiguille d'or, the chronometry, the revelation, and the audacity, and the eco innovation, actually these five prizes are given in the beginning out of the 90 watches, because so these prizes are given by the jury in the way they vote in the narrative early, and then you give the category prizes to the watches left in their categories.
I see.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So uh, but for me, it was one of the most nerve-wracking nights because you have your category, and Edouard Mellon from Mother took the time only from Streamliner, fantastic piece. Then Revelation of the Year, Remy took it with his tourbillon. You can't argue there as well, right? The guy has been at it with his wife for 5 years. Amazing watchmaking. Could not be happier for them. And you go like, okay,
Yeah.
like now this is go big or go home kind of deal. I had the heart racing in my suit like crazy. Uh, and at the end, it happened. Sometimes I wonder, if it didn't happen, what would my life look like? I like to believe, hopefully, that would not be so different. But nonetheless, it is very rewarding to have this. I think sometimes it has to have a bit of luck. As a watch enthusiast, as a guy in the industry, for example, I can't help to think about my friend Andrea from Furlan Marie, who came up with an amazing perpetual calendar at 110,000, didn't win something. My friends at Bulgari, they show up with the Ultra Finissimo, Octo Finissimo Ultra COSC certified, and they don't win anything. So there goes to show um, that sometimes hard work is not always rewarded, because you have so many brands, and sometimes they won the years before, and you have to give a bit of everything to everybody. So I would not want to be in the shoes of Nick Fouts and his team, who have to give these awards. So we had the chance to take one. I am very grateful. I had cut my phone the entire day, because the
Right.
problem also, before you get to the ceremony, people go like, good luck, finger crossed, you will do this, you will do that, and it fucks your brain even a day before you get into the room, right? So I I I had cut my phone. The ceremony went on. We went to dinner. We celebrated. I was at dinner with Max Busser, with Remy, with Sylvain Pinot, with Agman, with Laurent Ferrier. We had an amazing dinner. It was fantastic, a night that I will always remember. Uh, then we went to sleep very late in the evening, and the next day I woke up and I unlocked my phone, the plane mode. Well, he was like hundreds of I think my WhatsApp at some point was like 650 something. uh,
Wow.
and you have to start, and I spent literally 2 days on the couch replying to people,
Yeah, there
saying
must have been a lot of copy and paste.
it's not very glamorous, but it's the only way you can tackle such a. You have two ways: either you make singular messages and you're at it for 2 weeks, or you copy paste and you change a few things. And so it's not very glamorous, but it's the only way. And thank God this doesn't happen very often. This gives you, it gave me a glimpse of what it must be to be someone known, like an actor or a singer or something. I cannot imagine the daily life that goes with it when you are somebody known in the society. And this is just me with my small watch winning an award, which is a prestigious award in our industry. But let's consider, all things considered, that the watch industry is fairly small, right?
Yeah, yeah, of
Uh,
course.
so I
Yeah,
can't imagine like the guys like Waco and like that are known by everybody. The amount of solicitations that they must receive must be like crazy, absolutely
yeah.
crazy.
But I mean, I've learned something here though, because at least I know now when you reply to my message why you called me David.
No, it's not true.
No, no, no.
No, hey, and frankly, I try. I because I put a lot. That's what I told you when I say, for example, I don't spend the money on fancy stuff, but on the opposite, I try to have meaningful interactions with people. So I'm not too concerned about, like even here, I come back from I was telling for the audience, I was telling to Simon that, or to David, no, to Simon, I was telling to Simon that I had a run with my wife at lunch, which is why I'm dressed pretty casually, but I really try to put some good vibes in the talks and in the time spent. This is truly for me what stays. And to give you an anecdote, we won the GPHG, and I wanted to celebrate. A week after, we invited all our suppliers, all our friends. I even invited some of my neighbors, and we closed the oldest restaurant in town in Neuchâtel. Invite everybody for one dinner, which was quite simple dinner, but it was just about gathering people together, showing the trophy. So I showed the trophy to, for example, Gabriel is a handmaker. He's been in the business for 30 years. And he told me my hands, so he make watch hands, my hands went on 28 different award-winning watches. And it's the first time that I see one of these in real life. Because that's the reality of the business. You go from one project onto another, um, and it's hard. So he was very touched to see it. He was like a kid, and he was as happy as I was when I received it for the first time. And I wanted to share this joy with them. So it was really a very cool night we had, and that's the sort of vibe that I want to give to this brand. I think it's not the watches we make; it's also with who we make it and how we make it, which will last.
But yeah, Sylvain, I think that's a real testament to who you are and your character, that you wanted to share that moment with your suppliers and the people who've been on this journey with you. And it's this doesn't surprise me because look, we've been talking for a year, maybe 18 months, and I feel really privileged that that you WhatsApp me and we talk, and that I can count you as a friend. But it's just really is the kind of guy that you are. And I don't think that this success that you clearly going to have here is going to go to your head at all. That just doesn't seem like you.
So yes, I've never done it for success. I think what moves me is the personal endangerment of the artistic endeavor. It's like taking a risk, putting yourself out there, presenting a work that you believe is good, that you took some time and energy to make with others, and then you place it out there, and then hopefully people will resonate with it. And when it happens, it is the best reward that we can possibly dream of. Now we have, for example, even the second model that we've launched is sold out until 2027 already as well. So it's already 3 years of orders in the books. Um, and this is I'm very touched. And I'm happy for the suppliers. I'm happy for the team. I'm also happy to see the collecting world being brave enough to follow us, because God knows our products are expensive. I believe the price is fair because, for the record, one Mirage takes 400 hours of cumulative labor, which is no small feat, which is why it costs a lot to purchase. But yes, overall, it turned out. Now I can say it turned out, as of now, better than I could imagine. Uh, because when you start, you don't think that it will go this way. I still see myself saying to my Alex, my wife, in the kitchen, if I sell the first 12, I can die. I will be happy with this. This is the state of mind that I was in.
So, Sylvain, you've been incredibly generous with your time today, and I really, really appreciate you coming on the channel. And I think this is possibly one of the first video interviews you might have done since winning the GPHG award, I'm guessing. So that's a huge honor and a huge privilege for me. But I've taken up far too much of your time now, and you've got watches to make, so I think it's some time to probably wrap up.
Yes, thank you very much again, Simon, for having us. It is indeed one of the few interviews after the GPHG, so it's all still very fresh in our minds. And I hope we'll have the pleasure to see you either Watches and Wonders or Geneva Watch Days next year. I truly hope.
Definitely, 100%.
And in the meantime, I wish you a lovely holiday season. And I think we all need to rest and crash under the Christmas tree to finish the year.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for having us again.